Hey there, you're watching Dirt Bike Channel. I'm your host Kyle Brotherson. Today we're going to be talking about two-stroke mixing ratios. If you guys want a quick summary, because this video is going to be too long, you don't want to have to watch the whole thing. Mix the oil at the manufacturer recommended oil ratio for that oil. This oil is going to be different than this oil, and this oil is going to be different from this oil. So you figure out what Motul says to run this thing, which is 50-1. Run it there. You figure out what Motorex says to run this one at, that's 60-1, run it there. Figure out what Amsoil Sabre says, 80-1 to 100-1, run it there. Okay, now let's get into the full video. So there seems to be quite a bit of confusion about mixing ratios of how much oil you should be mixing in your fuel, and then a lot of people are also they kind of get confused by how that affects the fuel air mixture. And that's something to point out, that there are two different mixtures when we're talking about on a two-stroke. Generally speaking, you've got your fuel oil mixture, which is what we're talking about here. This is the oil that we're going to be mixing with our fuel. And then you have your air fuel ratios, and that's what you're tuning in your carburetor, and they work independently of each other, but they definitely do affect one another in that way. Something to note that it is, if you run your fuel oil mixture richer, as in more oil, it will make it harder for that oil rich fuel to pass through the jets in your carburetor, effectively leaning out the mixture, meaning less fuel will pass through those jets for the air ratio. So that's just something to keep in mind, that they kind of work inversely of each other. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to talk a little bit about the different oils and what ratios you should be mixing these things at. So what I did is, over the years, I've run a lot of different types of two-stroke oil. I've run everything from Motorex to Motul to Yamalube to other brands that I can't even remember, and then like Amsoil and a couple different kinds. And I'll tell you why I've kind of gotten where I have and why I kind of use what I use. If you look over here at my little whiteboard here, I've just kind of done a little bit of a chart. I've got some Motul 2T over here. This is the 710. This is 100% synthetic racing oil. And if you look on Motul's site, they categorize this as a 25-1. You can mix this in your fuel anywhere from 25-1 to 50-1. Okay, interesting. The Cross Power 2T, made by Motorex over here. This is something that they recommend anywhere from 40-1 to 60-1. I get these numbers from the KTM manuals, which I can show you later. The Yamalube 2R, which I ran on my Banshee back in the day, and which I've run a little bit in the last couple of years on some different bikes. That's an oil that they want you to run a lot more oil in the gas. They're saying that you should run that anywhere from 30-1 to 40-1. This Amsoil Sabre here, which I use quite a bit, this is rated for 80-1 to 100-1. And then Amsoil Dominator, which I don't have, is rated right around anywhere between 40-1 and 50-1. Now, why all the different numbers? It's because of the different compounds that are in these oils. It's the different lubricity factors that they have. And so one oil is maybe designed, for a certain amount of density, a certain amount of overall quantity inside of the fuel, whereas another one, say the Amsoil Sabre, is designed so that you can use less oil in the same amount of fuel. So how does this all, what does this all mean? It means that if you're running Motul, you should probably run Motul somewhere between 25-1 to 50-1. Most of the guys that I know that run Motul are running this right around 50-1. If you're running this, the Cross Power 2T, well, it'll say in your KTM manual right here that you should run your Motorex Cross T at 60-1 right here. But here's something interesting. This is if you're running a certain type of fuel. If you're running a different type of fuel with a little bit higher octane, then they're saying, hey, run it at 40-1. And why does KTM recommend that you run Motorex oil? Because Motorex is one of their sponsors. Motorex pays KTM. If you look through the KTM manual, it's like, drain cleaner, you should use, or chain cleaner, Motorex, fuel additive, Motorex, the long life grease, Motorex, motorcycle cleaner, Motorex, off-road chain spray, Motorex, Oil for oil for your air filter, Motorex. They want you to use Motorex because Motorex is one of their sponsors. There's a monetary reason why they're telling you that. Same thing happens with all these other providers. If you buy a Yamaha, they're going to want you to run Yamalube because that's their oil, and then they're going to tell you to run that thing at 32:1 probably in the manual because it fits within the spec that oil is designed to cover and have the lubricity characteristics that it needs to at that range. With the Amsoil Sabre, this stuff is designed for small two-stroke engines. This is actually really designed specifically. What they market it for is like lawn equipment, like chainsaws and weed eaters and things of that nature. But guess what? It works fantastic in the big bore two strokes, like the 125s and the 250s and the 300s. I have hundreds of hours on this stuff with never having an issue. The Amsoil Dominator, that's kind of like the two-stroke racing oil that they have, which is a great oil. That one, they recommend that you run that right around 40 to 50:1. Now, why do I like to run the Amsoil Sabre? I honestly don't think there's a huge difference with all these oils, but there is one major convenience that I have by deciding to run this oil. Guess what? These oil bottles, this Amsoil Sabre comes in these 8-ounce bottles. If I buy a case of 8-ounce bottles, then all I have to do is dump this into my gas can, and guess what? 8 ounces of oil in 5 gallons of gas equals 80:1 on the fuel oil ratio. If I put in 5.5 gallons in my gas can after dumping this 8-ounce bottle of oil, then I'm running at approximately 90:1. And if I can put 6 gallons of gas into that gas can, I'm going to be approximately about a 100:1 ratio. And guess what? It also comes in these other smaller containers. Like here's a 3.5 ounce bottle of this Amsoil Sabre, and I can just throw this in a backpack, and that way if I need to and if I get someplace where I need to put pump gas right in my bike, I can dump one of these right in my fuel in my fuel tank and then put pump gas in. So it makes it very easy. The biggest reason why I use the Amsoil Sabre is because it's so easy. If I'm running the Motorex, which I have done a ton in the past, or the Motul, then I need to bring a mixing cup with me to the pump in order to dump the amount in here that I need and figure it out and then dump it into my gas. And so it just takes one of the steps out. It's not like the end of the world to be able to mix fuel, but if I'm using the Amsoil Sabre, because of the packaging that comes in, it skips a step and I don't have to measure. This Motorex doesn't come in those. The Motul doesn't come in the smaller bottles. Even the Amsoil Dominator, you can only get it in quart bottles or like gallon bottles. So the biggest reason why I use Amsoil Sabre is because of the convenience. I also know that it's fantastic oil. I've had tons of people that have used this. I've talked to tons of people that have used it, and I myself have run it now for almost, in fact, it probably is 3 years. I've run this exclusively in every single two-stroke that I've had. Some of them I've only kept for 20 or 30 hours. Others I've kept for 150 hours before they were rebuilt. And all of those motors have had fantastic results. I've never had an issue with it. If you're asking, what should I mix my gas at? Mix it at the recommended ratio for that oil. Just because KTM says that the KTM 250 or 300XC needs to be run at 60:1, that's because they're telling you to run the Motorex oil. That's because Motorex sponsors them. Motorex pays them to say that. That's why they want you to run that at 60:1. It's not because the bike needs to be run at 60:1. It's because Cross Power 2T fully synthetic oil is supposed to run at 60:1 fuel ratio. This stuff can go 80:1 to 100:1. This stuff over here is supposed to run 50:1. There's absolutely no reason why you can't run this Motul in any of your two strokes, but you need to run it about 50:1. You probably shouldn't run it 60:1 because that's not what it's rated for. So 50:1, 60:1, 80:1. It's that simple. So check with the actual manufacturer of the oil that you are going to run and figure out what they recommend, and it's going to be different. So, if you got questions, leave them down in the comments. Please remember to like these videos, subscribe to the channel, and make sure that you've got the ringing bell icon there on my channel so that YouTube will give you notifications when I put out these videos. Like, share, subscribe. If you have questions that you want me to answer, go over to dirtbikechannel.com and there's a contact us page where I say have questions. You can email me there and I answer all those emails. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.